over an impact of division, acquiring it, that dealt with only cancer. They had a little bit of cancer, and that was a $15 billion company, but they were very, very sensitive. So they didn't feel that that was, even though I fought and tried to keep it, it was so rough. So I'm not sure what type of, these type of companies are still in existence, but if there are any.
Yes, there are some that have been grandfathered in because the samples were acquired before HIPAA came into place. Those are still allowed to run as long as it is de-identified data. It has to be totally de-identified, anonymized. As far as new post-HIPAA, okay, it's a whole different world. It's a whole different ballgame. We can't take those extra samples for future research anymore. The good old days, that's right. Although there is a glimmer of hope. There is currently a working group right now working with the Office of Civil Rights, who has jurisdiction over HIPAA. Begrudgingly, by the way, they fought against that. But they are trying to rewrite a lot of the rules regarding HIPAA and research. The research community internationally, not just nationally, has uprisen. We're pretty much under riot act now because the HIPAA regulations and the interpretation of them have thwarted many of our research initiatives across all spectrums. And so they are working on revisions to HIPAA that will broaden our ability for biospecimen banking, future research, okay, things along those lines. But as it stands right now, it's a very tightly controlled arena. So all current biobanks that have any specimens collected after HIPAA was implemented must comply with HIPAA. And so you can't share, you can't sell things off, you can't do lots of stuff. Right? Well, I know Stephanie and I were just doing the presentation.
Tim, can you give us any input on, kind of what's happening in the state? Because I know that you deal with a lot of, what's happening.
What's happening? Well, our role is, this is a very complicated field, and just you can look around the table and you see that we all come from very, very different backgrounds. And so the state's role on this is just one little piece of a much bigger puzzle that we're all trying to put together. But what I brought today to the table is a look at what the situation is with myeloma in Arizona. And currently we're, I'll hand this out. I only brought 6 copies, so if you could share. So in Arizona, we have about 250 new cases each year of myeloma, malignant myeloma that are diagnosed. And it's going up as the population is going up. The rate is relatively stable. The number of new cases each year is the rate of new cases is stable. But we're now up to about 250 cases a year just because the state is growing. And we analyze the data and produce looks at what age group and what race ethnic groups are represented in those 250, and what counties the people are from on page 2 of what you have.
I have a question. When you say incidence count, is that just N equals, or is that the number per 100,000 population?
The incidence count, like the top left table,
Yeah, it's
the
just-
count is the N, so
Okay.
it's not a rate. The
Okay.
rate is what you see on the right, the table on the right side.
I see.
I didn't label that very well. That's the number per 100,000 population. So the adjusted table is on the right side.
Okay.
I apologize for not making that clear that that's a rate per 100,000. So on page 2, one of the charges that you gave us, Barbara, is to think about, how do we make this an equitable venture here where we're involving people from across the state. The bottom graph shows where the cases are coming, or where they're living at the time they're diagnosed, and it very much follows where people live. So most of the cases come from Maricopa County, second highest in Pima County, and so forth. But this diagnosis is made of residents in every county of the state. So it is a statewide issue that we need to consider. What I presented on the third page, I think, is probably the most useful information that I think that the system needs to act on. And that is, where are these specimens, which facilities could be approached to participate or build up their capacity to process specimens and then turn around and get those into the hands of researchers. And for the years 2001, 2, and 3, which is the time period I did this analysis for, you can see by the different race ethnic groups which are the top facilities. And I picked about the top 10 for each of the categories. So let's just take the top furthest left one for columns. So for the white population, the leading facility was Desert Samaritan, which we think, based on the data in our cancer registry, would hold 28 specimens. So 28 specimens were taken at that facility to make the diagnosis, and so forth. So Mayo was the next most common, and Thunderbird, Banner, etc. And it's different as you look across the race ethnic groups. So for African Americans, of which there are only, there are not that many African Americans in Arizona, but Good Samaritan and the VA Phoenix would be the top 1 or 2 for there. For Native American, which is a very important group, Flagstaff we think would be the leading facility if one were to try to engage them to go after and participate in tissue donation, et cetera, across there. So that's what we've been up to, and we've worked together in trying to promote this, and it's really interesting to hear the reality of what it takes to get those facilities to actually get a good specimen and then move it down that chain into your hands. And if I had one thing that I think needs to happen is that the researchers, like the folks at TGen and the bench researchers, really need to articulate well to the rest of us and to the patient community the need for specimens and just how stymied you are in your research for lack of those specimens. And that I think that would cascade if that kind of information were to get out. That could cascade into something much bigger. We could take that information and say, look, there's 250 cases being diagnosed in Arizona each year. Only a handful of those specimens are really getting into the hands of researchers, and they're telling us they could do so much more if they only had more specimens. How do we connect these dots?
I think that's a really excellent point, and it's interesting because the very first research meeting I ever attended, you presented, Tim, and I remember you giving statistics